Awesome. So I'm just going to give it one more minute and then we're going to get started. Like I said, there's a huge group of folks on, so hopefully we'll get lots of you chatting in the chat box. We've got a great presentation today. Just let me know, did you guys read the article that I wrote about this, kind of setting this up? It was up on my website, buildoutpmp.com/blog, so on my blog site. Okay, I'm just, like I said, just one more minute. When the clock goes, I will get started. Super excited, though, to walk you through this material. So this is going to be great. Okay, I think we'll get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining today. This is the PMO lifecycle, the PMO assessment and inventory process. So it's a step-by-step process of inventorying your PMO, and we will get going. I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Bill Dow. I have 27 years of hands-on experience. I've been at Microsoft for 12 years, AT&T Wireless, Singular, Government of British Columbia. I've been a presenter for many, many years. I've spoken at several PMO symposiums, several Project Summit Worlds. I've been on the radio with Tech Desi. MPUG, I have a presentation October 18th on MPUG. So lots and lots of presentations, lots of webinars, and definitely excited about getting this information out to you. I'm also a 4-time author, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, and Shutting Down, Project Management Communication Tools, The Tactical Guide for Building a PMO, and way back in 2008, the Project Management Communication Bible. So I've been really doing this for many, many years. And like I said, super excited about sharing this information today. We've got a great agenda. We really do have a great agenda here. We're going to cover the 3-step assessment process. We'll talk about selecting tools and the collection method. We'll look for areas to watch for, and we'll give you some best practices around that. And then we'll do a wrap-up and more information. And so a jam-packed agenda. There's lots and lots to cover, but we'll make sure you guys understand the process and understand what we're talking about as we walk through this. Sound good? You guys want to give me a sounds good in the chat box? Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's go. So you are embarking on a huge process here. It's definitely going to take time. It's going to take energy. And clearly, it's not an easy task. I've done this several times, and it is very, very difficult. However, what I've done is I've built a standard process. And this process can be applied to make things much, much easier. So if you've got a process to follow and a process to go through, your life will be much, much easier as you go through this. And this is what today's presentation is about. So really 3 steps. Develop a plan, document your findings, and then write your recommendations within the PMO recommendation report. 3 easy steps. Develop the plan, document your findings, and then develop a PMO recommendation report. That's it. It's pretty simple. Yeah, clearly it's not. Clearly there's a lot there and a lot that you need to consider. So let me walk you through that process. So step 1, as we said, is develop a plan. This is critical in setting up and documenting your inventory of findings, right? So you've got to have a schedule. You've got to have a plan. All projects have schedules. All projects have plans. This is literally no different. So I strongly suggest you set up a schedule as well. This is going to be a huge job, right? You're stepping into an environment where you're going to need to take the time and document all the things that you're doing. Now think about what this assessment or this inventory process is. You are assigned a PMO. You just got hired as a PMO manager, and you need to go and understand what you're getting into. What's the environment that you're about to get into? So for people that are interviewing for PMO manager jobs, this is perfect. For people that are accidental PMO managers that just got selected as a PMO manager, this process is perfect. But the schedule is going to give you the justification for all the work you have to do, and it'll allow you to work with your management and literally let them know the progress that you're making as you progress through this process. Okay, so it's going to take time, and it's going to obviously you're going to have to work with your executives to say, what are you doing, and basically how long are things taking. So here's your schedule called the PMO assessment schedule. And obviously this is just a sampling, clearly, but what you're going to do is you're going to take the big buckets of work that you're going to do, and you're going to go deep, and you're going to ask these questions, and you're going to allocate time, you're going to allocate people. Okay, so it's really, really important that you get a schedule in place as you go through this process. And of course, it's just a sampling. We've got a full schedule available, but it really does allow you to have that great conversation and that great discussion with your management to say, here are all the things I'm going to do, and here's my rough time. I love this schedule, right? It's a great starting point. Clearly, you'd have to fill in every section. Most of this is filled in for you. However, every environment's different, and therefore you'd have to fill in any unique areas for yourself. Make sense? So having a schedule will set you up to be as organized as possible, right? It's going to allow you to keep a tight control of what you're doing and how long things will take. And of course, with a good schedule, things go a little bit longer. You're going to see that, and you're going to see the delay on the other end. So, and you also want to ensure you're providing constant visibility to your management. Again, ramping up to a new job, ramping up into a PMO environment, understanding that environment is a huge task, but you'll also be under a huge amount of time pressure, right? Because the management's going to want you to ramp up as fast as possible and understand exactly what's going on as fast as possible. And it's just not possible without a schedule and without having those things documented of exactly what you'll be doing. Make sense? Excellent. Okay. All right. So we've got a schedule. We've got a draft schedule in place. You've got that schedule. Now it's a matter of spending the time and documenting your findings. Okay, so how do we document our findings? Well, let's look at that. So during the course of this process, right, you'll be collecting a ton of data. Imagine how much data you'll be collecting as you go through all the areas of your organization, So you have to have a tool to collect the data and to analyze that data. And so that's exactly what I've created. I've created the PMO Assessment Inventory Guide, where you're taking all the aspects of each of the major areas of your inventory to collect. And you're writing the resource names, you're writing, do they even have it? Remember, you're doing more of an inventory than an assessment. And so do they have it, yes or no? And then what are some notes about it? So again, obviously just a sampling. But this is an amazing tool to capture exactly what's going on in the organization. And then on the other hand, imagine how much data you're going to have when you collect this and fill this all in. So this is basically your data collection tool. And this is the process that you will fill in and keep filling in as you execute through the project, through understanding the PMO and the organization you're about to take over, or that you have taken over and you're in the early ramp up stages. What do you guys think? You guys like that? Seen something like that before? Prasad or any others, folks? Have you guys seen something like that before? And again, this is just a sample. Okay, great. Okay, so as you can see, though, there's going to be a number of components to capture. You're going to capture the resource names. So who are the people that are in charge of that particular area? Or who did you talk about? Applicable, yes or no, right? Did they even have it or not? Again, it's an inventory, not necessarily an assessment. We're using those two words kind of together, right? And then what are your notes? What are you finding? What were the good things? What are the bad things? What did you discover in this process? Okay. So as you go through this discovery process, you're going to have a ton of data that you'll be capturing and a ton of data that you're going to drive through and make sure that you capture within that spreadsheet. Okay. So this process is not easy, right? And you're going to need a process to help you through it. It's not an easy process. There's no question it's not an easy process. But what I've done is I've broken down this process to make it as easy as possible. So let's do that. Let's do a deep dive into the process. One of the things I can't stress enough is it's important to take the time and document this process completely. Spend the time and understand the PMO completely to give you the best chance of recommending what's needed. So think about that. You're going in and you're trying to understand the environment. And so you want to spend that time. You want to understand exactly what is out there so you can make the recommendations to your management. Remember, start part 3 of this process. You can make the recommendations to your management of what things you should update immediately and where you're at, where the PMO's at. Another really critical point is assume positive intent. Right? Assume positive intent throughout this process. It'd be very easy to get judgmental, or they didn't do this right, or they didn't do that right, or I wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have done that. But it's very, very, very important that you assume positive intent and really understand that different people are at different levels. And so just because they didn't set it up the way you wanted it doesn't mean they've set it up wrong. So as you go through this process, assume positive intent and just capture exactly what's out there. That's all you're doing. You're inventorying this process. Does that make sense? Excellent. So what I've done is I've broken this down into 10 steps. 10 steps of what you'll do through this inventory and assessment process. You're going to review the PMO environment. Review the PMO structure and staffing, review the portfolio of work, review the budget and financial, review the problem areas and positive areas, review the maturity model, review the methodologies, review the tools, review the reporting, and review any education or any training that's set up. Once you've done that 10-step process, because it literally is 10 steps, your 11th step is writing your PMO recommendation report. And ultimately, we call that, step 3 of the bigger process. But all of these components all go into a recommendation report. And it's this structured process that will walk you through exactly how to ramp up or how to and understand a PMO environment as quickly as possible. And then, of course, doing that recommendation report. What do you think? That makes sense? So again, these are the minimum steps, right? And there's no way I could have possibly covered every possible step for every different environment. There's just not possible. So there could be more, there could be less, but this is a great starting point, and it's going to give you a good enough feel for you to confidently write your PMO recommendation report and go in with your executives. Right? So one of the things that's important in this process is to think about all the best practices, right? In setting up a PMO and setting up and running a project management office. What are some best practices and what are some things to think about and to think around when you're going through this process? So 10-step process. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of the steps and what are some things you should be focusing on? What are the things you should be keying on as you go through that process? All right. And what do they look like? Well, the first one is around the assessing and reviewing the PMO environment. So where are all the documents stored? Are they in a centralized location? Are they on someone's hard drives? Can you get your hands around all the documentation? Or is all the documentation all over the place? Right? So when you're looking at the environment, you're really trying to understand where are all the materials? SharePoint sites, hard drives, land drives, where are all they? Right? And that's something that you want to understand very quickly. It's a PMO is an organization, right? And so what are the mission statements? What are the vision statements, right? How is the current manager trying to rally his or her troops? How are they trying to treat this as an organization? So look for vision statements, look for goals, look for mission statements, right? These are critical to understand and whether they're working or not. And then executives. When you think about your PMO executives, this is a great time to understand how engaged or not engaged your executives are. Are they hands-on? Are they hands-off? Do they spend time? Do they understand their role? Do they understand the environment and some of the challenges? So when you're thinking about the environment, some of the best practices really is around understanding where your executives are at. Make sense? Excellent. Now what we're going to do is review the PMO structure and staffing. So this is the time you talk to the current staff. What's working? What's not working? What's the biggest struggle? What's the biggest complaints, right? And it's good to hear what's working well, and it's good to hear what's not working, right? Not everything could be wrong. Not everything every PMO manager has set up is wrong. So you want to capture what's working as well. So you want the good and you want the bad, because all of this is going into that PMO recommendation report. What roles do they have? When you think about staffing and structure, what roles does the PMO have, right? Do they have portfolio manager, project manager, program manager, right? And so how aligned is that to PMI? How aligned is that to Prince 2? How aligned is that? So understanding the top roles that they have, you'll get that industry alignment, or at least understand that industry alignment. And then finally, qualifications. When you think about staffing and the structure, you want to know the current qualifications of the current staff. You'll find that there's some superstars, there's some people struggling, right? You've got contractors, you've got vendors. Some vendors may be there far too long and just been around forever and maybe need some replacing. So at the end of this, you want a great handle on all of the all of the staffing, vendor, employees, contractors, whatever the case may be. But you want to walk out of this process really understanding the staff, so you can update your PMO recommendation report with what your findings are and what you want to do and what you expect to see when you take over this PMO. Does that make sense? So it's really, really important to understand that process. Okay. Next is you're going to look at your current portfolio of work, right? So this is where you're assessing, doing a deep dive. What programs are going on? What projects are going on, right? You want to spend a little time and get technical, right? Understand where the projects are red, where are they over budget, what are the major issues, what are the major risks, right? This is where you look at the portfolio of work and really spend that time and do that deeper dive. And then from a problem area perspective, right, where are the major problems, right? Again, don't offer suggestions, don't offer solutions. Get that in your PMO recommendation report. This is you doing a deep dive on the portfolio of work and then really highlighting those problem areas and the areas that are working, and then really understanding where you want to move the ball forward, but you put that in that recommendation report. It's so quickly as you deep dive into the projects to see where people are doing well and people are struggling. You don't want to do that. You just want to step back and understand inventory, not assess necessarily, but inventory, and then get that in the recommendation report. And then finally, what's the workload, right? What's the workload of all the staff? Right? What's the ratio of projects to project managers? Many PMs struggle because they have 15 or 20 projects and it's just not scalable. You want to know that going in. You want to understand exactly if you've got project managers there at 15, 20 projects and all of them are in a mess and they're all and they can't, and they're not doing a great job at that. You know, a lot of times that's just the ratio is wrong. And you often as a functional manager, you're going to want to know that workload and that ratio. So that's a critical component. Okay. So let's look at step 4. Step 4 in this whole process is around the financials. So one of the first areas is to get a handle on budget. Are you over budget? Are you under budget? What's the spending like? Can costs be cut? Do you need more budget, right? You need to spend that time and really understand the financials of the organization you're about to take over. Staffing, determine what kind of budget's allocated for the staffing. So in a lot of times what what PMO managers struggle with is, hey, I'm an organization that have staff, and what kind of money and what kind of budget do I allow or do I allocate to my staff for training, for tools, for education? Often very, very limited. Well, you want to know that. You want to know that you've got 10 employees and there's X amount of dollars that you can spend for those employees. That's a great thing to understand from a financial perspective as well, especially as you're assessing and reviewing the PMO. And then you want to look at any procurement process. What are the processes? When do the billing cycles? When do the reporting happen? Right? You want to understand that whole procurement end-to-end process so you know exactly how that's working and what are the expectations. You may have weekly reporting expectations on budget. However, most budgets are calculated monthly, but you want to understand that as well. So you really want to walk out of this understanding the dollars, the budgets allocated, and really all the financial aspects of the PMO to, again, get that within your PMO recommendation report. Because ultimately that recommendation report is going to your executives and you're saying, this is what I'm walking into, and here's my suggestions of how I'm going to run this PMO. Does that make sense? Excellent. And I'll definitely get to all the chats sessions in a minute as I kind of walk through this process. The next is your PMO problem areas and your positive areas. And I just say step back on this. And I say go in with an open mind and really try to understand all the problems that are occurring. You know, what's the issues with this PMO? What is it? The model? Is it the people? Is it the level it reports to in the organization, right? Understand everything, capture everything, listen to everyone, right? This is your chance as a newbie, as a brand new person with no political agenda. You're coming in and you're understanding what's going on in this PMO. You're doing an inventory. You're not passing judgment. You're just trying to get an assessment. So what's going well? Positive. This is time to track the positive areas, right? Like I said earlier, not everything could be a problem. There's got to be some things that are working out well. Make sure you probe and get the positive areas. You're often going to hear problems. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. It's so important to get the good things as well. Document everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Get it all down, get a full end-to-end picture, and then get this into the PMO recommendation report. I can't stress enough how important it is to document the good, the bad, the ugly, and get that in that recommendation report. So your executives who may or may not be tracking with the PMO, they know exactly what's going on. Okay? Maturity model. When you think about PMOs, you think about an organization and how does that organization move forward, right? So you want to spend the time and determine what's the maturity. They may not have a maturity in place, right? They may not have a maturity model, and that's okay. But the current leader, the current PMO manager, the head of the PMO, whatever you want to call them, they had to be thinking about how to move the ball forward. What training did they want to put in place? What roles did they want to put in place? Have that maturity conversation. It may not be a model, but they've got to be thinking something. If they've been around running this PMO for some time, they've got to been thinking about how they want to move that ball forward. Okay, and that's what you're going to do. And it may not be a level per se, but it's what were they doing or what were they thinking. Scoring, don't score, don't judge, right? Don't feel obligated to judge. Oh, this is a really immature PMO. They have no processes. You don't want to do that at this time. You just want to inventory. You just want to understand exactly where they're at, and you want to capture that information, but you don't want to judge, you don't want to score. And again, it's important not to judge maturity, right? You'll put all these in that PMO recommendation report, but your judgment if you do that judgment early, when you do take over the PMO, that could haunt you, right? Because you've made a lot of judgments, you've made a lot of statements around, hey, this is good, this is bad. And you're really at this time in the process where you're inventorying, you're not in that position to make that call. So just a pre-warning, don't judge, don't score, and really take the recommendations and put it in that recommendation report, because politically that could be a huge issue. Okay. Number 7, the PMO methodology. So what methods and methodology is the PMO doing right now? Do they have portfolio managers? They have program managers, project managers, right? What process, procedures, playbooks, guides, what tools do they have in place to be able to implement those methodologies? Right? If it's an IT PMO, then what development methodologies do they have? Are they using Agile? Are they using Waterfall? How is the project management and Agile working together? How's the project management and Waterfall working together? So you're going to want to look at the different methodologies and the different and how they're working together, from a portfolio program project to an Agile Waterfall scaled Agile perspective, and really understand how they're working together, what's working, what's not working. Do they have formal project management? Does that align with the development methodology? So really take the time and understand what type of models and what type of methodologies do you have in place? Do they have in place? And then document those methodologies and make sure you really get that loaded down into the PMO recommendation report, what's working, what's not working, and then bring your background and experience to that recommendation report as well and put your findings in there. So it's really, really important that you have that methodology conversation, work with everyone, and then document accordingly. Okay? The next step is around the tools set, right? So step 8 is around the tool set. So do an inventory of the tools. What tools do they have? Do they have portfolio tools, project tools, program management tools? Do they have project? Do they have Primavera? Do they have smart sheets, right? Take an inventory. Let's get a list of all the tools that are available. Once you have that list, then go down the path of adoption. Do all the tools have all the adoption? Are they 100% at the adoption? Or do we have tools that are not being used? So it's really important to get the inventory, and then we're going to say, okay, who's using what? How much is being used or not being used? You can have hundreds of copies of project and no one using project. That would be a problem. And so it's really important as you're doing an inventory and you're really assessing kind of what's going on, is you want to understand that adoption level as well. And then on top of that tool scenario is look for maintenance agreements. Look for how much these tools are costing. What, are they monthly? Are they yearly? What are the costs? Because you want to look at adoption, you want to look at costs, and you go, hey, there's some potential retirement opportunities. All of that information will go into the PMO recommendation report. So look at it, do an inventory, look at adoption, look at the cost, and then marry all that information up and put that into that recommendation report. So important that you've got a good handle on that, because there's so much, often there's so many dollars associated to these higher price program and portfolio management software that you want to look at the adoption level and the cost. Then what you'll do is you'll look at the reports, right? And first thing you're going to do is what reports are being what are the reports being created for the executives or the leadership? It's so important to understand all the various reports the executives are getting, or they're not getting. What are they missing? What's working? What's not working? And really spend that time and understand the reporting for your executives. That's a critical component of running a PMO. And so that's a starting point that you're going to want to spend time and get there. And then what you'll do is you look at dashboards. Do you have dashboards set up? Are they working? Are they not working? What are the costs to running dashboards? Do you have to have multiple developers, right? Dashboards are becoming more and more important. And there's something that's becoming daily part of PMOs, especially with Power BI or Tableau or all the various tools out there. Power BI is just an amazing tool from a PMO perspective. And so again, dashboards, but some of these dashboards come with costs. Some come with developers. So you want to understand that in the reporting world and when you're really assessing all your reporting. And then you also want to look at, hey, what's the overhead, right? How are your employees, your current PMO reporters, are they spending forever creating these PMO reports, and they need to spend the time executing on the projects? So what's the overhead that these reports are creating? How much data entry do they have to do? And then once you have that, you'll have that, again, all that information will go into your PMO recommendation report. Does that make sense? Excellent. Okay. So the final step is PMO training and education, right? So what are we looking for here? Well, we're looking for all the training that's being offered. What are the training options in the PMO? Is it training based on methodologies? Is it based on roles? Is it based on HR requirements? Spend the time and understand the training, right? What is all the training happening? Then once you do a list and you do a review, then you're going to look at the quality, right? Very, very quickly, if you've got a ton of different reports on risk management training, issue management training, schedule management training, go look at the report or the training themselves and look at the quality. There could be horribly done training and your employees getting nothing out of it, or they could be amazing training and your employees getting a lot of value out of it. But you want to understand that quality. The other thing to look for too is often PMO will hire outside vendors to do all their training for them. They come in, they do the training, they own the training material. But when you're looking at budget and you're looking at spending, maybe some of this material you could do it yourself, and maybe there's some cost cutting there, right? And so if you've got a training background, you've got a lot of experience in the PMO and project management space, maybe you could do some of that training. But right now you're just assessing it. You're looking at outside vendors. You're looking at what the vendors are. Do they do outside vendors? Do they have their own material? Do they bring and use your material? Again, really trying to understand that whole concept. All right. And so that's a critical component as well. So one of the things I want to make sure that there's this alignment around building, right? So if you've read any of my books or read any of my articles, you're going to see the components we just covered are the same as in how to build a PMO or in my articles and my books, right? I believe the components we just covered are critical in building a PMO, right? And so the 10-step process that we walked you through are things that you should be looking for when you're about to assess or inventory an environment, right? And so it's really, really important to have that review and look for those disconnects between the areas. Because understanding where PMO is at across each of the 10 areas is really a critical step for building or enhancing a PMO. And so I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that alignment there. Right? So you've read my books, you read my articles. Those 10 steps are really going to be really aligned closely to what I said in either building or running a PMO. Okay? So step 3 is writing your recommendations. So you have just collected a ton of data. You've put that in the inventory tool. You've got the person you've talked to, you've got yes or no, and you've got a ton of notes and best practices around all the things to capture. Now it's time to write your recommendation report. This report's going to cover both your findings and your recommendations. It's an executive level report, right, that you'll use to document your next steps of where you want to take the PMO, right? And so let's look at the report now. Before we do that, though, I just want to step back and say, hey, if you are interviewing for a PMO position, think about those 10 steps. Think about all the things that you will talk to the interviewer or the hiring manager about what you're going to look for in your PMO. And so think about that. I've just given you a 10-step process of how to inventory and assess a PMO. And now you're interviewing for a PMO position. What do you think you should be looking for in your early conversations with your reporting and with your hiring manager? Those 10 steps, right? So I just wanted to sidestep very quickly because we'll look at the recommendation report during the interview process. You may not write that, but I think it's a really key point and something you want to consider. So let's look at the PMO recommendation report. This is it, PMO recommendation report. Okay, contents, you've got all the sections, right? You got your table of contents, and you're going to say, here are my recommendations, because it includes what I found and my recommendations. And so what's this look like? Let's just look at one of the sections. So when I assess my environment, what's working? What are the areas for improvement, right? Your notes and your recommendations and any management asks around that particular area. Now you can write it out. You can put the same thing in a table, or you can actually go and pull in the table from the collection tool. Now, this is all up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to build the report. I've got a template. But again, you'll either write it out, you'll put it in a table, or you'll suck in from the collection tool. But what you're going to do is you're going to put an assessment for each of these areas. So the 10 areas we just went through, you're going to put every one of those areas into this recommendation report. And yes, I certainly have a template for you. Does that make sense? Excellent. And again, I will get to all the comments afterwards, but I just want to make sure you guys are tracking. And so you take the 10 areas. I've got a template. I'm giving you a couple different examples, but the third one would really be pull in the data from that collection template. So that Excel table, basically, or that table. Okay. So once your report is ready, book the time with your leadership and present your findings. But here are some of the things that they're going to be looking for. How long is this going to take? How much will it cost? How many resources will you need? Right? These are the 3 common questions that will come up over and over and over again. Good luck, right? You've done a ton of work to assess a PMO. And you should be proud of that work because you've got a ton of data, and you know going in, if you've just been hired as a PMO manager, you know what to do. If you're an accidental PMO manager, you know what to do as well. I got some recommendations, right, for your PMO recommendation report. My book, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down. My class, the online version of Building, Running, and Shutting Down. Or, of course, my tactical guide for building a PMO book. Right? Consider these materials in writing in your recommendation, right? So to be as knowledgeable as possible is critical. And when you're presenting to executives of what you found and what you recommend, and these materials will help you with that. Make sense? Excellent. So let's do a wrap up. We've covered a ton of areas. We covered 3 major tools in performing an assessment or an inventory. And again, I look at those as the same things. You have a schedule, you have a collection spreadsheet, and you have a recommendation report. These are the 3 sets of tools that you're going to need and walk you through building and really building that recommendation report by having a schedule, by having a collection spreadsheet, and then putting everything in there. Spend the time, understand this process, right? You want to be able to have intelligent conversations with your leadership, and you want to plan. The leadership's going to want to know, how are you evaluating and reviewing this organization that you're about to take over? So performing the steps we covered will give you a great starting point, and understand the PMO that you're about to be leading, or even, again, like we said, that interviewing process. Having that conversation with the hiring manager of these are the things you're going to be looking for. Make sense? Excellent. And again, I'll open up to questions soon. More information, my brand new book, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, and Shutting Down, available on Amazon. So definitely you can go get that today, and it'll give you some great information as well. However, a book, an article, a guide, right, is only going to take you so far. So my question is, can I show you something that will help you with this process? You guys interested? You want to see it? Okay, excellent. So here's what I've done. I've built a PMO assessment package. Okay, it's limited time today. It's $49.99. That's going to go up. And here's what we have. We have the project schedule. We have the collection tool. We have the white paper. We have the PMO recommendation report template. We have this webinar material, and we have the article. Plus, we also have a half-hour call with me. So I will sit on a call for a half hour, and I will answer all your questions, and I will get you set up to do this. So again, here are the 7 things that it includes: your schedule, your collection report, your white paper, your template, this material here, the assessment article, and a half-hour call with me. All purchases have a 15-day money-back guarantee, and this will help you drive and get yourself set up to properly assess and inventory a PMO. Okay, where do you find it? Go dowpublishingllc.com, store 2 under paid products, and it's right up there. It's a limited time. I'm going to leave it for $49.99. It's going to go up in price as soon as we get off this webinar, and I will give it a little bit of time for you guys to jump on there and get that, but I'm not going to leave it at this price. There's a ton of material here, from interviewing for a PMO manager job to actually being put into this process where you need to assess the organization. All this material is critical in that process. Any questions at all on the PMO assessment package? And what I'll do is I'll open that up. And again, I'll come back. I'll open up the material for questions in a second here. We'll talk about the PMO assessment package. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. Here's all my material, build.dowpublishingllc.com. There are my 3 books. Get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, that type of thing. And thank you all today. And so I will go back and I will bring up the chat, and we will have a quick chat session here. Let me just turn this off, and you should be able to see it. So Prasad's asked a ton of questions. So let me start with these. I will go back up. Let me see how I can shut that off real quickly. 1 sec. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, and I will just turn the video off real quickly. Okay, can you hear? Okay, greetings. Why are we not reviewing the business needs and whether the PMO is meeting them effectively? Great question. So let me answer all these in order here. Why are we not reviewing the business needs and whether the PMO is meeting them effectively? This is not the purpose of this particular presentation. So let's talk about why and how you do it. We talked earlier about interviewing. You'd be interviewing for a PMO manager job, or basically there's a PMO out there and you just have been hired to run the PMO. So this isn't, this is really not about whether the PMO is effective or not. That decision's already been made. This is about you coming into the PMO, into an existing environment, and either inventorying or assessing what you already have. Yes, you should start with the value proposition. I get that, but again, not what we're talking about. We're talking about the PMO is already existing. The executives have made that decision, and you're about to walk into running a PMO. I hope that makes sense. We need a PMO competency model to assess the PMO staff, isn't it? Yes, you definitely do. And it is very subjective, but remember what you're talking about here. You're just getting hired. You're just getting selected. I have a whole competency model. There's how you assess your PMO folks in my books. So you can go check that out. But yes, it would be very subjective at this early stage, because what has happened is you've been hired as a PMO manager and you're trying to get your head around all the things that are happening in this PMO. You're doing an inventory. So yes, technically at this very point, it would be subjective, but you're going to want to know what the staff are, what are some of their qualifications. At this very early stage, it is subjective. And that's the point. You don't have time when you're just taking over a PMO that to go very deep and do a competency model. It's not the point. You're going to say, here are the staff, here are the people, here's the general consensus, and you should get that when you're talking to them as well. It's not about the number of projects, the competence. Yes, you're 100% right. When you think about the PMO ratio, right? So smaller projects, I've always used, and I've ran multiple PMOs, I've always used the 1-to-3 ratio, because in IT, that seems to be fair, and that seems to be what they can handle. As projects go to development, for example, the dev cycle is the longest cycle. The PM could take on another project. So I've used the 1-to-3. But I see nowadays project managers have 15 and 20 projects, and they're just doing a horrible job because that's not scalable. You cannot scale across that many projects and do all the rigor and the actions and the decisions and the dependencies and all the goodness of that end-to-end project management. You can't do that across 15 projects. So that's a great question on ratio as well. One fundamental question. For any kind of assessment, we need a reference framework or a standard to perform the assessment again. What model could be used as a PMO reference model? Now, again, I've put out models. The models that I've put out around building, running, and shutting down are industry-leading models. And so what the model I just showed you, Prashad, there, is a model that you could use. And so, again, it's not my first rodeo. I've done this for years. And those things that you look at and you could use, those 10 steps, are the fundamental. Now, every organization is going to be different. There may be 11th or 12th step or something unique. For example, say SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, very big in America. That may be a component that you need to look at and review because your PMO does all the SOX stuff, for example. So that you may want to add that and put that in the recommendation report as well. Hey, we've got one SOX person across 500 projects. It's not scalable. In my PMO recommendation report, I want another SOX person or something along that lines. So those 10 points, again, they're industry leading, they're industry standards, and they will give you a huge advantage as you drive through and execute on this whole PMO assessment process. That was a ton of questions. I hope I covered them all. Prasad, thank you for those. Is there any other questions? Like I said, there's a ton of people on. And so I'm here to answer questions. Again, the PMO assessment package, I think is great value. There's 7 things that you're added there, and that will walk you through exactly how you're doing this material. And either you're interviewing, you're involved in PMOs, you have to assess the environment or inventory the environment. Those materials will give you the tools that you need to be successful. Any additional questions? Was this valuable? Okay, so I'm going to turn on the offers there so to get folks. So give you the click. Is a PDF of your book available? The PMO Lifecycle Building, Running, and Shutting Down is not at this point. And I'm not sure I'm going to make it available. And the reason why is I've had so many people steal my other books, and they're not, and I can't do anything about it. So you can steal Project Management Communication Tools. You can steal the Tactical Guide for Building a PMO. All stealable. Just go Google it. I get Google searches every day. I contact the companies and say, please stop stealing my book. And they're not, and they don't. And so I haven't made the PMO Lifecycle Building, Running, and Shutting Down available in PDF format, frankly, because I can't stop people stealing them. And it's disheartening to build a book and write a book and take years and years to produce all this material. And people in these websites keep hosting them. So sorry about that. So right now, get the physical copy on Amazon. All the links are there. The PMO package links there, the books there. And then, of course, the online course is available as well. Again, that's going to give you that online 19 different modules, a private Facebook group. Again, great material on how to actually build, run, and then shut down a PMO. Anything else? Any additional questions? Discount coupon. Yes, I can definitely send you a discount coupon if you just want to email me at Bill Dow. I'll just put it here, Bill Dow at dowpublishingllc.com. And I will Bill Dow at dowpublishingllc.com, and send me a quick email. I will send you back a coupon code to get a percentage off on the book. Any additional question? Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you all very much. I really appreciate your time. I hope I answered all your questions. I hope this material was good. And thank you all. And I hope that you guys get that package, because I hope it really will help you through this process. Have a great day. Thank you all very much. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks.